Gatorade would be great, Lori.
It is old time hockey day here on Touching Greatness, and it is great to see old friend Paul Stewart back on the air. And Paul, you look great. You look fantastic.
Well, there's a little snow on the rooftop, but there's still fire in the chimney. So
Yeah, not literally though. So you're in on Cape Cod, right?
I'm in Hyannis Port,
That's
and
beautiful.
literally less than 50 yards to my golf course where I've been a member. But I'm a fellow that came here in 1965 when they had a caddy camp. They had 8 mash style tents in a semicircle and a mess hall that was taken from the old Camp Andrews, which was Otis Air Force Base, which is where
Okay.
Kennedy used to fly into, and they brought that over, and we had a camp with 56 kids, mostly inner city kids. I was one of those guys, and we caddied every day at Hyannisport Club, and later on I worked on the greens, and as well. Uh,
Nice.
I became I washed dishes at night, and then I worked at a restaurant, and then when I got to be 18, I qualified to be a lifeguard, which was a great job because I got to see all the members' daughters.
That's great.
And every 2 weeks, the babysitters would change, and I
I love it. You know, I
I
have
had a
been
pretty
named
good time of
I've
it.
been named an eternal lifeguard for a car wash. That's been
Yeah,
my entire career.
I
You
think a
never
lot
know.
of hockey people have had to second nature do things that could help us keep the boat alive. So my wife just
Exactly.
delivered me a Gatorade, and I'm good to go.
Outstanding. Okay, so you are a hockey Hall of Famer in USA hockey, but I didn't know that you are in 5 Hall of Fames. This might take the entire show for you just to list them.
Well, it's interesting. I was in a bar not too long ago in Dorchester where I grew up, and a fellow that had a couple wandered over and he said, "Are you Stewart, Paul Stewart?" I said, "Yep." And he said to me, "I just wanted you to know that you were a terrible hockey player," and a few other words. And I said, "Well, I appreciate that." And did you buy tickets? He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I own a nice house on Cape Cod, and I really appreciate you buying the tickets." "Well, you're such a smartass." He says, "You're a worse referee." I said, "Can I borrow your phone?" "What do you want to borrow my phone for?" I said, "Well, I'm in 5 halls of fame. I want to call them and tell them they made a mistake."
That
I
is
said, "I think it
fantastic.
might be cheaper and less painful if you go over and see John, that bartender over there, and ask him for beer, put it on my tab." I said, "I think it might be a little better for you."
That is
So
fantastic. I love it.
I'm
Well,
I'm um, I'm
yeah.
a member of Binghamton, New York. When I played there and I refereed there, Binghamton, New York Hockey Hall of Fame. I was a duster and a whaler. And
Yeah.
then I went to the Massachusetts Hockey Hall of Fame, and I went to the Groton School Hockey Hall of Fame, and I went to Groton School for football. I played 5 positions,
Okay.
and I had a full scholarship to Lafayette to play college football. I was a big kid, and I was sort of rugged and willing to mix it up. And then I got into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame.
It's just spectacular. And to remember those old days, we're going to go over that just a little bit. But before we continue on, you're also an author, damn it. You
Well,
want to
it's
go,
funny
baby?
about
Come
that.
on, right here, right there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny. The guy I'm fighting, Terry O'Reilly, is the captain of the Bruins, and I often say it was Thanksgiving night, November 22nd, 1979. Fatorik had been into it with Schmatz 2 nights before in Quebec. He cut him up pretty good with the stick,
Right.
and the Bruins had their lunch pail gang, and they were going to take it out on Fatorik. And I was in Cincinnati under contract to Quebec, and they recalled me, which was my first official regular season NHL game.
Yeah.
And it's a storybook, really a storybook writing that my first game in the NHL as a player was in my hometown. And in 1928, when they opened that building, my grandfather refereed 12 of the 20 games that the Bruins played that year at home. And my
Great.
father refereed 19 bean pots and many NCAA and ECAC championships. And it was my rink as much as it was the Bruins. And Mr. Brown, who owned the Celtics, and he ran the BAA, which is the Boston Marathon, and the Boston Arena where the Bruins originally played. I never bought a ticket to that rink.
Wow,
and I know all the Bull crew, and I'm a union guy. And all of the ushers and ticket takers and the folks in the concessions. I went back for the Beanpot this year and spent most of the time shaking hands with all my friends that I hadn't seen.
Wow, that's fantastic. How many years did you end up as a ref in the NHL too?
17. 1986, okay. I did my first game. Ironic, it was in Boston. It was at the end of the season. Montreal was playing Boston for second place in the Adams division. And Dave Newell, Ron Asseltine, and Leon Stickle were the crew, with John McCauley sitting there. And he was a supervisor next to Nate Greenberg, vice president of the Bruins. Yep. Great guy. And I was sitting there observing and learning as much as I could. And in the second period, Mats Naslund took Newell up into the dasher, and they didn't have the padding on the stanchion, and he broke his ribs. And when he came off the boards, down he went. And the two linesmen were kneeling over him, and Leon Stickle looked up, and he pointed to his ribs and made the broken sign and shook his head. And McCauley reached over, the father of our present referee, Wes McCauley, and he touched my hand. He said, "Go get dressed."
Wow.
And that was my first game. And I did very well for the first 30 seconds. And then I disallowed what turned out to be, would have been the Bruins' winning goal. Courtnall, he tapped it in, but Casper had stolen the puck along the boards and threw it to the front of the net, and the puck went in between Waz's butterfly, and I was cruising in at the net, but the way Wah was, I couldn't see between his pads, and I saw everybody converging on the net, and I blew the whistle and threw my hands up, and then one more stride, and I see the puck sitting on the goal line, and Courtnall tapped it in. Roy turned around and said to me, "You blew the whistle first." I said, "I know what I did." And Bork skated over. He said, "That was a terrible call." I said, "It wasn't when I made it. I lost sight of the puck."
Yeah, exactly.
And he said,
so you guessed.
Yeah. And it was funny because the fellow that used to play for the Islanders, and he played for LA with that funny helmet, was coaching Boston. And you know him. And I'm thinking of his name right now. Butch Goring.
Yes,
and Bork said, "I think Butch wants to talk to you." And I went like this. I looked around Bork. He's kind of wide. And I look at Goring, and he's standing in the doorway giving it to Billy Graham with the arms. And he's got the two veins sticking out of his neck like red lobsters from Maine. And I said to Bork, "I think we'll just drop the puck and get going, finish this period, and we'll talk later." And with about a minute to go, I had called a legitimate high stick on Montreal, and Bork hit the post. Would have taken me right off the hook, but it wouldn't have been the storybook ending that it turned out. That Boston ended up tying with Montreal. Montreal finished a point ahead of them. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals, and had not Boston tied or had Boston beaten Montreal, Jean Perron would have been fired. Serge Savard was going to let him go. And Serge told me that later. It was interesting because they went on and won the Stanley Cup, and Perron got a new contract, and he never sent me a dime.
Wow.
Not a penny.
Okay, I have two.
That was my first game.
That is so awesome.
And then subsequently, the next year, 87, I was working in the American League, and I was chosen to referee the finals of the Canada Cup, Russia versus the U.S. Versus Canada. Actually, that was the game in March. It was in September 13th in Hamilton, Ontario. And when you look at the power play that Montreal had, that the Canadians had with Bork and Messier and and Howachuk and all those fellows and Lemieux. I mean,
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, they all knew me. They knew me. And the Russians knew me because I played against them too. And
Nice.
I just went out and refereed the game. And after the game was over, God rest his soul, John McCauley came in and I was taking my skates off and he tapped my foot with his foot. And I looked up at him. I had tears in my eyes, just like now, because I think of him just like I think of my dad.
Really?
And he said to me one word, superb.
Oh, nice.
And he walked away. And then he came back a few minutes later. He said the committee, including Eagleson and the Russians and Tikhonov and Keenan, they want you to do the game Tuesday night. And I'm like, really? The final game?
Wow.
And it was $2,500. It was pretty good dough for that. And I could have used it. But he said to me, you're not going to do that game. You're going to put that ice bag on your knee. And I had surgery in July on my knee. Yeah. And he said to me, you're going to tell him that you'll let him know in the morning, but you just had surgery. And if you screw up Tuesday night, I can't help you. He said, right. But you proved what Scotty Morrison, the head of officiating, and I have felt about you since you came on board. You're going to be an NHL referee, and your next 80 games are coming from me. You screw up, it's going to be a hard sell. I said to him, okay, I'll do whatever you say.
I'm on vacation.
I stood by for the game on Tuesday night. Koharski worked, and I don't have any bitterness or resentment or, I'm a pro. Yeah. And, we when you're in the service, it's like I watch a lot of, and tonight we're on the eve of D-Day, and it's interesting because I feel a little bit like George Patton. I just salute, say yes, sir, and do what I'm told, and that's it.
I get it. Well, I got a couple.
I don't like it.
No, I got you. I got a couple of my two favorite Paul Stewart referee stories, and one of them wasn't even on the ice. We'll talk about that one first because it happened more than once at the old Fabulous Forum in Inglewood, where you would come in and there was no time to get together or anything. You're in and out. You go to a game and you're probably on your way to the airport after the game, for all I know, or the next morning, often, right? And there you were, and you say, "Hey, Ted, come on in between periods." And I said, "I can't go in there between periods. They got the FBI standing at your door. There's no way I'm going in there." And I'll never forget the first time I was there, and the guy looks at me because you told the security guy who's standing there, "Hey, let this guy in." And he says, "I can't let you in." And you came walking out and you said, you let him in. And if there's a problem with the league, you haven't got, or you said something like that. And I walked in, and I have never in my life imagined being in the referee's room during a game between periods, hearing you BS with your lineman guy hanging out and talking about plays that were great or you screwed up. It was, if I had a video camera, baby, that would be, it was unbelievable. And thank you again for the few times.
Well, Ted, you and I had many, many hours of talking and being together on the bus when I was down in the minors, and I've always respected your persistence and your confidence in your abilities, going back to when you were a kid, sitting up in the top row and doing the games by yourself with the tape recorder and everything. And you're not too far off, or we're not too far off from being together in that, because many people told me I was never going to make it, not just to the NHL, but to the University of Pennsylvania. They told me I was never going to go through Groton School, one of the best schools in the country. My classmate's a Rhodes Scholar and a congressman.
Nice.
I helped him with his homework every night. And
I got no credit for it either.
That's right. But it's your book and your life, and how many people, and it's such an appropriate title, Touching Greatness, how many people that you've come into contact with. And my dad used to say to me all the time, your impact on people, it's like throwing a pebble in a pond. It goes and it keeps going. And
great. I like that.
For the right reasons, we keep getting invited back, or we keep persisting so that we get to the goal that we want to get to. And we're doing that. And I've had, I've had some little conflicts here and there along the way with some of my bosses in the NHL. After Macaulay and Scotty Morrison left the officiating, Macaulay passed away, sadly,
Right.
in 89. My career was stalled. I was never going to get to the finals. And in the history of the NHL, 100 years, there have only been 4 Americans that have ever refereed in the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. Bill Chadwick, Dennis LaRue, Chris Rooney, who's working now. And the last but not least was a guy that did 9 Stanley Cup Finals, was Bill Stewart, my grandfather.
Wow.
And I never got there, but I worked 2 Canada Cups, and I worked every final in every other league. I worked in the the Central League, the American League, college hockey. I went from being the lawbreaker to being the law enforcer. But to me, it was all just a big slice of pizza from a big pie that we call hockey. And every slice had its moments for me, and every one of them was satisfactory.
Well, it's a great story. Forget the thousands of memorable stories of your refereeing. To me, the greatest part of all of that is the kind of player you were and had to be in the slapshot era to become an official. To me, is fascinating. And I always loved just hearing about how you ended up becoming an official, because they were not your favorite people when you were playing, if I recall correctly.
Well, I was job security for Bill Friday and Wally Harris and all of those fellas. And they gradually got to the point where they accepted me. There's in fact, and a lot of people don't realize.
Paul, Stewie, is it a fact where if you can't beat them, join them, or is it a lot more to it than that?
I think it's more that I loved putting on my skates, and I loved going out on the ice, and I loved the way that I watched people respectfully treat my dad and my grandfather.
Okay.
And, my grandfather used to walk into the garden, and I'd be in tow with him, and Milt Schmidt would walk over, and all of the Woody Dumart and Rock Richard and Boom Boom Jeffrion and all those fellas, and they treated him with great respect. And in the summertime, he was a major league umpire. And the day after he won the Stanley Cup as a coach with Chicago, he umpired a game between the Boston Braves and the Red Sox at Fenway Park. Sports was our way of life, and I felt that it wasn't just a birthright for me. It was my whole personality, my whole psyche. And I respected my dad and my grandfather so much, and people don't understand that. I was a minority. When I broke in as a player in 75 in the minors, there were only 11 Americans playing in the National League.
Oh, yeah.
When I got to training camp as a referee, it was Mike Noeth, there was Collins, there was Brosica, there was Shakti. There were only 4 Americans.
Wow.
And, the fighting part, it's no different than, we see all these people that have to fight, they get in the ring with the total fighting and all of that and boxing. Yep. They're all minority guys. So you do what you have to do.
Exactly.
And I took the job because no one else wanted to do it. But I used to spar with Marvin Hagler, and I had Vinny Marino was my trainer, and he had been an undefeated pro. And I learned to fight when I was 12. I was fighting 16, 17-year-old kids at the New Garden Gym directly across from the old Boston Garden. And where I grew up in Dorchester, my brother got stabbed on Christmas Eve for his hockey stick.
Wow.
Coming out of the park, skating on a pond in the park.
Wow.
A tough neighborhood. The Wahlbergs are from Dorchester. Every one of them has a record. My brother was their probation officer.
Wow.
So a tough neighborhood.
Yep.
I knew Whitey Bulger.
We've had those talks before.
No, but I went about my business, and my father and my grandfather, and people knew that we were we were athletic in sports, and we were there to, and I just wanted that life, and I could have done anything. I think about it now. My son, the oldest guy, I named him after John Macaulay. His name's Macaulay John Stewart. And
Nice.
he just graduated with distinction from the University of Minnesota. 1 year he was student of the year. He's applying to law schools, and he's coming back next week from Minnesota to teach and prep for maybe the Harvard or one of the top schools, Columbia, Fordham. He admired Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I wish him well. I'm going to do everything I can to give him a helping hand. And my youngest son, he's a greenskeeper at the golf course, and he's a student at St. Anselm's, and they're finding their way. And this life today is tough.
Yep.
But my father and my grandfather gave me everything that I needed. They gave me pride. So much pride that I would never quit. When I got diagnosed with cancer in 1998, they told me I had 6 months to live. And it was the morning after my son was born.
Wow.
Well, that's the wrong thing to say to me, because I just said, I'm going to fight. I'm fighting. And I did. And I refereed that whole year.
Really?
I didn't even tell the NHL I was sick.
Wow.
Until September training camp. And then I went to camp and I passed the physical, and I had huge scars, and I was on chemo. I took chemo every morning and every night.
Wow. And still skated in between that.
I refereed games, and I just did it because excuses are from losers. And people can like me, they can hate me, they can do whatever they want, and they can think whatever. But I've done everything I can, and I'm in a position where I can help people, and that's what I do. And I've had the opportunity to be with some fantastic people like yourself, and you look at any of the other people in the media that have been so kind to me. And then you look at guys. I played against Gretzky his first game in the WHA.
Oh, really?
In
Okay.
Indianapolis, and we were in an exhibition game in Dayton, and I got to know Walter, and I knew his whole family. And I go to a golf tournament the other day for the Sports Museum in Boston, and I run into a lot of the Bruins and Patriots, and they treat me with respect.
Nice.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah. That when you skated against Gretz, that was his first pro game. That was my first full pro season. So at the same time,
I said to him that night, we're in Dayton. I leaned over the board. Whitey Stapleton was his coach, and Whitey had tried to sign me to keep an eye on Gretzky. And Indianapolis, I thought financially was a little shaky, but Scalabrini, a guy named Scalabrini.
Well, that's why they got rid of Gretz, right? They couldn't afford him.
Yeah, they sold him off.
Right.
But I leaned over the board. I told Gretzky before the game, when Whitey introduced me to him, I said, they tell me you're a good player. I said, you go play. Don't worry about anybody taking you on from my team. I said, we don't play that way. I don't play that way.
That's nice.
And they had signed Willie Trognitz, who had been our teammate the year before. And just go about your business. I believed in the code,
right,
of what it takes to be a tough guy, a real tough guy, not a backstabber.
Right.
And I believe in the code. And I would never have gone after Gretzky. And Messier came over from there to us, and I roomed with him.
Oh, okay.
I took him into a bar. He was 18. I took him to a bar in Cincinnati, and Pete Rose's Porsche was outside, red Porsche. And I said, come on in, we're going to go in here and have some lunch. Just sitting at the bar with Pete. And he had his eye on the bartender, who he eventually married, and had a son, Ty, named after Ty Cobb.
Oh,
and
okay.
I sat down. Now, Messier had a big kid, and he had on like a plaid hunting shirt and a pair of bib overalls and a pair of big Tyrolean boots, work boot style.
Okay.
And I introduced him to Rose, and we sit down, and Mess gets up to go to the washroom. Pete leaned over. He said, what kind of player is he? I said, he's going to be a good one. He's they call him Moose. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, well, you got to straighten him out and maybe teach him a few things, Stu. I said, what do you mean? He goes, Look at his outfit. He looks like he fell off a tractor.
That is great. All right. Give me one more NFL reffing story that I recall you told me decades ago, but I don't remember the specifics on it. But it comes back to your playing days and your earlier days as a ref in the big leagues that you got pissed off at a couple of guys. Maybe it was just once, but I got a feeling it was more than once. You tell me and us, you got so mad at somebody on the ice while you were officiating that you told the guy, "Look, if you don't like it, I'll beat the crap out of you." And they had to almost put you in handcuffs, not literally, of course, but the league had to calm you down like to geld a horse.
Yeah, well, it's interesting in many
Did I
ways.
remember it correctly or no?
Yes, and there are several stories both in the minors, in the Western Junior League, in Ontario, and the the first one was in Springfield, and Al Arbor. Springfield was the Islanders team, farm team, and Al Arbor was sitting with Jack Butterfield. God rest their souls, both good guys. But I was reffing, and of course, there was a curiosity about having me out there. And two guys, one from Springfield and one from the other team, they dropped the gloves and they circled and they had their arms up and they're doing this and doing that. And 10 seconds go by, 20 seconds go by, 30 seconds go by. I finally leaned in. I said, listen, you two guys, you either start fighting or I'm going to take this whistle off and kick the shit out of both of you. Well, of course, the phone rang from Toronto the next morning. And I had a game in Pittsburgh one night, and I had Mark Fawcett had come in. He was a year or so behind me, and he was in Pittsburgh. And Lemieux, of course, great player, bumped Fawcett, and he said to me, I'm the show. People come to see me. So the linesmen were there for that game. Pardon?
Lemieux said that?
He said it to Fawcett.
Wow, I'm surprised he would say that.
The linesmen were Mark Perry and Jerry Gauthier. So the next night or 2 nights later, I come in and they're still there, and they're telling me the story. I said, "Oh, is that right, huh?" So I skate out on the ice. They're playing Philadelphia, and it's a tough game. And Tockett's playing, and he was captain at the time, and it was 4-4 tie going into the last minute. I go down into the corner and I'm screaming toward the net. I don't want to have another game like the Boston one. I want to get to the net. That's where the money is for referees. Yep. So I got knocked down, and Mark Perry was right on the line. He covered, and the puck hit the crossbar and came down, but it came down just outside of the goal line. And I thought it was in, and I wasn't sure. So and of course, Pittsburgh's, they're celebrating 5-4. And the Island and Philadelphia is starting to stream off the rink. And I said, wait a second, just a second. And I said to Mark, what happened? He goes, well, the puck never went in. It hit the crossbar, came down. So I wave off the goal. Lemieux comes up and he bumps me. He's 6'6". I'm 6'1". And I'm 210 and kind of strong, but he's 6'6", about 235, 240.
Yeah, exactly.
And big. And I said, and I took Aikido and I took karate and I boxed and everything. And I just took my 2 fingers when he bumped me and I put him right into his chest and I just pushed him back a little bit. He goes, get your hands off me. I said, don't you ever bump me again. He goes, now all the Flyers are congregating. There's 9 other players standing around. I'm at center ice now. He said to me, see all these people? They came to see me. I'm the show. I said, is that right, huh?
He said it to you too.
Struggle. And then I looked at Talk and I said, can you believe that all these people came to see him? And he's standing there and he doesn't know what to say. And I said, well, I said, Mario, they're going to get a chance to see you sit right over there. Boom. So the game goes into overtime. They're down a man. He comes out, finishes the penalty. He comes down into the corner, and before he sets in to take the center face-off in the Philadelphia end, he skates over to me, and he says, can I ask you a question? I said, sure, what's that? He goes, and now all the Flyers come back. Everybody's back. There's a whole crowd. And he said, you did you play in this league? And I said to him, yeah, as a matter of fact, I did. I said, you know that because you're from Quebec. I played for Nordiques.
Oh, that's funny.
He said, well, I heard you were a horseshit player. I turned, I said to him, but I got paid American money. I can promise you. I said, and you know what? I played in the National League. I said, and I don't have to say any more. All I can tell you is this. Let's get the game going. He says, well, I just want you to know something. You're a horseshit referee and you have no balls. And I was like, excuse me? So I looked at Talk and I said, what do you think?
Enough. Another one?
No. What do you think? And Talkett's looking at me and he like they're not sure what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, what is he gonna say, right?
So I did a circle. I did a little circle. I said, you mean all these people are still here to watch you? He goes, yeah, that's right. I said, we have a problem. How are we going to get them all in the shower? You're done. See you later.
Oh, are you serious?
I dumped them.
Oh, wow. That is
And it's
great.
funny because years later, we ended up playing in a golf tournament for Rowan's father, who was vice president mobile in a summer tournament. We ended up at the Capitol Grill of celebrities, and there were a lot of good players, a lot of good kids from the NHL, and I was there. And Lemieux and I at the original Capitol Grill, we had a couple beers and smoking a cigar back in those days. You could, and we just talked, and he's a good guy, and I never had
a great relationship with him.
Yeah, so I got sick, and he got sick.
Yeah,
and we both were ill about the same time, and when I did my first game back in Pittsburgh, and the team doctor for Pittsburgh was Chip Burke, and he went to St. Sebastian's and Harvard, and I grew up with him, and we played hockey together, and he is one of my close friends.
Nice.
And he used to come in the room and I got to calm Mario down, and so my first game back into Pittsburgh after I had been sick, and I'd sort of the league had sort of taken me around the league because they were starting Hockey Fights Cancer and such.
Right.
And they were playing Washington. And Leonsis was standing in the hallway just outside of their room, and our room was right adjacent. And Mario came down, and he wasn't playing that night. I think his back was sore. Anyway, the security guy came in and said, hey, the big guy's out here to see you. I said, which big guy's that? He says, Mario. I said, oh, yeah? I walked out, and I would put my hand like this to shake his hand.
Yeah.
And he hugged me.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So these are things that people don't understand, but
hockey family, baby.
It's part of, we're all part of the same family, and we're all part of the same. And as much as you can, get into a fight with your brother or your sister or it all comes back down to we're pros, and this is the game. And I look at the winning goal of the Canada Cup in '87, and I'm right behind the net, and I'm pointing at the net, and Gretzky's got his arms up, and Lemieux's being hugged by Murphy on the other side, and I got a copy of that picture.
Nice.
And they signed it, and it's in my book.
I want to see a copy of that. That'd be great.
There's a copy of that in my book, and the picture of me pointing and such.
Right.
And I just look at it from this point of view that I don't believe in luck, because everything I got, I worked for. But I believe that I've been very fortunate, and having had the ability and the talent and the confidence that I knew I had, I made the most of it. And since I've been off the ice now 20 years,
wow,
I've done still a lot of things to help people.
Right.
And I think that gives me a sense of satisfaction, and it gives me certainly a moment of pride to be able to say, I was on the ice with Bobby Hull, and I was on the ice with Gordie Howe. And that's a great story. Gordie Howe, really. I lined up next to him first game in Cincinnati, playing against Gordie Howe.
Yes.
And he's playing right wing and I'm playing left wing. And I said to him, I named my dog after you when I was a kid. And he looked at me. Now he's like 50 and I'm 25 and I'm skating to try to catch him. And I figure, well, I'm going to hook him. Well, if you've seen Karate Kid Part 2, he did a Mr. Miyagi wacko and he got me right here. And I woke up in the dressing room looking at this light and the trainer's doing this to me.
Wow.
And I said to him, what happened? He says, oh, geez, Gordy hit you with a hell of an elbow. I said, oh, yeah? Really? I said, am I all right? He goes, yeah, what day is it? I said, I don't know. It's today. So I said to Demers, you got to put me back out there. He says, are you going to fight Gordie Howe? I said, what, are you kidding me? That's Gordie Howe. I'm not fighting him. But I lined up next to him, and I said, hey, Gordie, nice elbow. I'll be able to tell my kids about that. He goes, welcome to the league, rookie. I said, yeah. I said, hey, remember the dog I was telling you about? He said, yeah. I said, I'm going home and choke the bastard. Gordy retired in 1980. Colleen and Gordy asked me to be the MC at his retirement dinner.
Really? Oh, that is great.
And when you think of
kidding me.
And then the other one is Johnny Cullen and Rocket and I were introduced in 99 in Tampa at the All-Star game as the three hockey people that had been battling cancer. Rocket sadly didn't make it. He had stomach cancer, and Johnny Cullen had some type of blastoma in his chest, and I had the colon and the liver. And the NHL introduced us, and then they asked us all to say something, and I stood up and I said, I want you to know something. I said, you're looking at three very fortunate guys, three guys that have all played the game. I said, and had Conn Smythe or Harrison and been able to get us all three at the same time. I said, Gordie Howe, 1,000 goals. Johnny Cullen, 300 goals. And me. So between us, what a line. It's 1,302 goals.
I love it. That is great.
So you have to have a little sense of humor about yourself. Course. Be realistic and understand, when I skated out on that ice in the Forum the first time playing for Quebec, King Kong Korab body checked me through a hip, and I scrambled up his back. And honest to God, I was standing on his shoulders. My knees were on his shoulders, and he was like 7 feet tall. For Christ's sake, I said, "Don't drop me! Don't drop me!"
That is great. Hey, but you got to give us one more real quick story about somebody that you just got in their face while you're in the NHL and said, if you do that again, I'm going to kick your ass, or something similar to that. I know you had a few of them, and I don't know if you can remember anything specific.
Well,
they're classics. I just love them.
There was a kid named Lemieux that played for Montreal, and then he went to Jersey, and I think his son's playing in the league now. And you
talk about the tough guy,
Claude Lemieux.
Yeah, his brother played for my Ice Dogs team in the IHL.
So he had a habit of, and he was in the American League playing in Sherbrooke.
Okay.
And he had a habit of, because he was a big fellow, he was 230 pounds, and he was a big, strong guy. And he had a habit of diving, faking it, feeling it his teeth and all that. And we're in Moncton one night, and the linesman was a guy named White, and the other linesman was Romeo LeBlanc, one of my great friends.
It's too bad you don't have a good memory, Stu.
Yeah, not too bad for a guy that never wore a helmet.
Exactly.
I wore one when I played because I kept getting whacked off the head. But O'Reilly said to me when I fought him, he said, take the helmet off. I said, get closer, take it off for yourself. And he said to the press after, I don't know why he wears a plastic helmet to protect a cement head. So Lemieux got into a fight in Moncton, and he was manhandling the linesman, and the linesman broke his wrist, and he was screaming in agony and pain. And I leaned in. I speak French, and I said to him, arrête, arrête. And he ignored me.
Really?
And then he turned and told me to, take a hike in French. And I said to him, I told you to stop. I grabbed him by the back of the sweater, and I grabbed him by the crotch. and he's 230 pounds. And I picked him up, and back then they didn't have the glass in front of the penalty box.
Yeah.
I threw him right over the boards into the whole
box.
Arena was like, whoa. And Pierre Kramer was his coach. And 2 days later, they filed charges saying I was anti-French.
What?
So I ended up in Montreal, and I said to Serge Savard, my brother was with U.S. Customs, and he used to collect Cuban cigars from fellas that didn't or shouldn't have brought him in. Exactly. I used to get him, and I'd bring him to Serge because Serge smoked cigars. I always liked him. He was a good fella. And he was one of the guys, John McCauley told me, he said, now that's a GM you can talk to. And, it was reasonable. But I end up in Montreal in Brian O'Neill's office with Jim Gregory and Serge. And I said to Serge and Brian O'Neill, I said, I played in Quebec. I said, and every time I went to Moncton and I was at a game there, I would always go to Romeo LeBlanc's house. And I had a dinner, and we never spoke English the whole time.
Really?
I said, so there's great respect for the French. And you go ask Jacques Demers, or you ask Maurice Filion or Marcel Aubu, the owner. I loved playing in Quebec. And I had dinner one night with René Levesque. And he said to me, with Jamie Hislop and Reggie Thomas. And we're sitting there, and he said, so he looked at me and he said, he's smoking. Like, there's only two sections in French restaurants. There's smoking and chain smoking. And he was, he's sitting there. He looks at me and he said, so as an Englishman, do you have a problem being up here with the Quebecois? And I turned, I said to him, nope. I said, I have somebody that does all the talking for me. I said, and if you have a guy like this talking for you, it doesn't matter if you're French or from Israel or doesn't matter.
Or
he
Mars.
says, oh, you have an interpreter? I said, no, I have these. George Washington does all my talking. I said, it was kind of funny because he spoke English better than I did. But in the National League, I had run-ins with Yzerman. I had run-ins with Neely. And, they would try to intimidate me. I told Yzerman one night in Detroit, I said, you actually stand in front of the bench. He's a great player, and I didn't like having to dump him, but I couldn't take his disrespect. And
really?
More so not to me, but to the linesman.
Oh, wow.
I didn't like the way he talked to the linesman. And I was a guy my whole life that I stood up for the kid in the schoolyard that couldn't fight for himself. And I do a lot of work with special needs kids. And you know what? They get bullied and pushed and ignored and warehoused. And, I do whatever I can to help. And I don't mind stepping in.
What did he say to the linesman?
It was about an icing call, and he berated him, and I stepped in between him, and I put my face right about 2 inches from his. I said, you talk to him like that, and you're not going to be here very much longer. Oh, wow. Fuck you. And I said to him, oh, yeah? I said, well, you can leave. Boom. And I dumped him right then and there. Wow. First game I had him in New York, his teammate ended up coaching in Columbus, Jerry, whatever. He was from the Maritimes. He ran Greshner from behind, and I gave him a penalty for boarding. And Yzerman came out and said, oh, another rookie referee, you have to put up with you. I said to him, son, when I was playing in this league, you were still nursing on your mother. I said, don't give me that crap. Yeah. I said, take your show and go back to the bench. And he said to me, blah, 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 blah. And I said to him, well, thank God the elephants are here tonight. The circus is in town. I said, you can shower with them. You're all done. And I actually dumped Gretzky the next night, and then I dumped Lemieux on the Saturday night, the story I told you before.
Really? Gretz got in your face?
I waited till the end of the game because he was trying me out. And Edmonton had a good team, but they were playing in Hartford, and the place was packed, and I wasn't going to dump him. So I just turned my deaf ear to him. And, got down to about the last minute. He skated over. He handed me his stick, and he said to me, you took it out of my hands. You might as well keep it. I pulled the Sharpie out of my pocket, and I said, hey, go in the dressing room and sign that for me, will you? He goes, Oh, after the game, I said, no, you're done. See you later.
Wow.
So I get a call from Ziegler, the president. He goes, you threw out 3 superstars in your first 3 games. I turned, I said, well, one questioned my sexual preference. The other guy questioned my physical equipment. And the last guy bumped me.
Oh, God.
I said, and you know what? You should understand this, Mr. Ziegler. When I'm out there and I'm wearing that sweater, I don't represent Paul Stewart. I represent you and the league and the rules. And if those guys with 38 other players sitting on the bench can get away with talking down to an official or abusing him, then we're going to not have games. We're going to have mayhem. I said, so the message has been sent, and that's it. And I can promise you, I won't have any more problems. But I did tell Eisenman one night in front of the bench, I said, you actually think Scotty Bowman decides if you play? Scotty was like 2 feet away chewing on ice. I said, Scotty doesn't decide if you play. He only decides to put you out here. I decide if you play.
Oh, wow.
You keep going the way you're going, and you're going to be showering again. And trust me, I don't care.
You obviously don't care.
No, I didn't care whatever rink I was in. We have rules. And people don't understand the symbolism of a referee sweater. It's a black and white. It's a yes or a no. It's a right or a wrong. And you can't equivocate. And
You're
I've
the cop.
never been
They got to respect you as a cop, and that's the end of it.
But you have to earn their respect.
No, I get it.
And I didn't demand it. I earned it. And you got to remember that these guys, when I first saw Detroit, and I was refereeing their games in 88 and 87 and 89, they weren't a good team. But my first Stanley Cup game was Chicago at Detroit.
Ooh, good one.
And Detroit won the game. And guess what? Paul Stewart refereed. And we had Keenan coach in Chicago. And Paul Stewart let him play. And there was 1 penalty.
Really?
1.
Wow.
It was a hook late in the game. I had to call it. Otherwise, I'd have had a no-hitter,
Did Keenan at least congratulate you afterwards?
Keenan one night in St. Louis, he's standing there, and I go, with the 2 referee system, I'm the back guy, so I'm doing the line changes.
Right.
And Keenan's the home team. He's coaching St. Louis, and Gretzky and Hull, Brett Hull, and they've got a good team, McGinnis, and they've got good players, and Twist and all those fellas.
Yeah.
And they're playing Chicago, and it's a tough game. And Keenan, I put my hand up and I go, you want to change? And he goes, screw you. You're a no good blank sucker. I looked at him. I said, excuse me, what'd you say? He said, you heard me. You're a no good blank sucker. And you're effing this and an effing that. And I skated over. I said, now you went to St. Lawrence and you were roommates with Kim Britt, who I know. I play golf with him. I said, is that why they taught you to talk up there? He goes, you know what? You are definitely a no good blank sucker. I turned, I said to him, I take exception to that. No, I take exception to that. I'm a very good blank sucker. Ask Brett Hull. Keenan laughed. He was laughing so hard he had to go up the runway. All he was trying to do was get my goat. He comes back. I said, I know what you're doing. I said, the game's won. You're single. You got some cougar's phone number, and you're trying to leave early. I'm staying. So are you.
That is so
great.
People
People often wonder, was I abrasive? 20 years of reffing, every level. Pee-wees all the way up. Tikhonov with the Russians. I called 4 bench minors. 3 of them were to 2 teammates of mine, guys I played with. Ronnie Wilson got 2, and Fatorik got 1, and the other guy was Brian Murray, God rest his soul, that coached in Detroit and coached in Washington.
Yep.
And he had a lisp. And I'm not making fun of him, but kept saying, Paul. And I kept going wiping my face.
Yep.
So finally, it was a play. Kiprios got hit by Brent Ashton, or Brent Ashton got hit by Kiprios, knocked out cold. And the players, they were trying to get at him, and it was a clean hit in my mind. And in Winnipeg, and Murray kept screaming at me. And Paul, and I said to him, "You keep spitting on me, I'm going to dump you. You can take the walk across the rink. It's pretty cold here in Winnipeg. Help yourself." So I banged him for a 2. And it's ironic because David Poyle was the GM of Washington, and he said to me before the game, I happened to bump him. I knew him. I knew his dad and mom, and he played at Northeastern. Hockey's so, close. We know each other.
Yeah.
And I said to David, he said to me, you're the only referee in the NHL that's never called a bench minor on my coach. In fact, he had just come back from being suspended for getting into it with Asseltine up in Buffalo. I turned, I said, well, there are 2 sides to the rink. I just skate to the other side. I said, but if I ever do bing him, it's because he's at the end of the road for me.
Wow.
And I binged him with a 2. So like 4 bench minors in 20 years. And never threw a coach out. And the next morning, Poyle fired him.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. One way, Jean Perron gets a new contract and wins the Stanley Cup. And the other way, Murray gets fired, but he went on to Detroit and he was with Ottawa. And, I know his brother Terry very well. I played against him, and I feel badly, and you look at Roger Nielsen. He was coaching Ottawa, and I used to go see him before the game.
Really?
And somebody saw me go into his office before the game. I used to walk around. I like to talk and I like to socialize.
Really? There's breaking news. You like to talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I went in to see Roger Nielsen, and somebody ratted me to the league.
Wow.
And they called me and said, you can't go see the coach before the game. I turned and I said to him, I'll do whatever I want to do. Because if it goes public, I said that I was going to visit a guy that's on chemo.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I said, it's part of the humanity of this whole thing. I said, and last year in Toronto, I went out on the ice in place of Roger to give the Canadian Cancer Society a check for $500,000. And my son and I sat in the Eaton Center Marriott with the Stanley Cup and raised, people getting in line and signing autographs and taking pictures and everything. Yep. I said, so you can say whatever you want, but Roger Nielsen is a human being. And at this point in time, he needs to hear from Paul Stewart.
Good. Yeah, and I hope that'd be the end of the story too. I mean, the guy's got to walk away with his tail between his legs after that incident with you, right? Just saying, what the hell are you going in there to talk to him for?
After 1989, the upper management of the National Hockey League had a target on my back, and they looked for any different thing to take me out of the playoffs, to demote me, to psychologically try to beat me. And they didn't realize, toughness doesn't come just because you can use your hands, or you can take a punch, or you can go in and body check a guy or stand in front of the net. That's part of playing the game, using the abilities that you have physically. Toughness comes here and in your heart. And they could never beat me. And as I said, and I don't mind saying it now, in 1998, I had colon cancer. And later on, I had colon Campbell. Both were equally bad to me.
Oh, God.
I don't care.
No, I know. We've talked about it.
That guy took me off of ESPN. I had a contract to be the color guy with Barry Melrose and Steve Levy, and he put me off the air.
Wow.
And then I went to Boston, and I got taken off in Nesson.
Because of him.
He's the vice president of the league.
Wait, he makes a phone call and says, I don't want this guy on your air. I mean, they should tell him, though. It's like, excuse me, we appreciate that. You can't tell us who to hire.
He's the vice president of hockey operations. And you know what? We've talked enough about him. I took him one night in Pittsburgh. We played. He was playing for Pittsburgh. And I gave him a rope-a-dope. I grabbed him and smacked him from one end of the rink to the other when we were playing against each other.
Right.
And I leaned in and I said to him, You should go get a stepladder and come back when you're taller.
I think you said the same thing to me, actually.
No, I would never say that. But we had a lot of fun, and telling stories like that, I don't really care. And there's no bitterness in my heart. And you know what? Bettman runs the league, and he appoints people to do what they do. And he had Brian Burke, and then he had Campbell, and you know what? The league's successful. I appreciate when I was ill, Bettman and Daly treated me royally.
Yeah, I remember you told me. Yeah.
They took all the pressure off my mind. And in my speech at the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2018, I acknowledged them. That because of them, I got to be the first American to referee 1,000 games in the NHL.
Nice.
And because of them, I was sitting here in 1998, having had the news that I had cancer and that I was going to die. I went to the cemetery. I bought a plot next to my father and my grandfather. And I said to the guy that runs the cemetery, this is so ecologically sound. He said, you just got, a terminal diagnosis. I turned, I said, yeah, I know, but I'm thinking about me being here with my father and my grandfather, 3 referees, all pretty good. I said, and it'll save gas. And the guy's looking at me, he says, save gas? What do you mean? I said, well, they can get on to the Cora pub before they come over here to visit us and have half a dozen beers. And if they don't like referees, they get 3 in a row. They can pee on all of us at the same time.
That's a Gordie Howe hat trick from a referee standpoint,
yeah.
Right?
But I've had a pretty good life. I've got 2 wonderful children. I've got a nice, fantastic wife who saved me. I got friends like you. I got Katie Cork, who, because of her courage in 1998, my wife slapped me on the arm and said during the Ghana Olympics, I was home. She said, Paul, her husband just died of colon cancer. You have all those symptoms. You should go get checked.
Wow.
And that's how I thought I had the flu and a hemorrhoid.
Wow. Interesting.
And I've been asked to speak at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance at Radio City Music Hall. And I've been asked to speak all over. And I tell people all the time, get your colonoscopy and make sure that if you start to feel not well, know your body.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the signals. And, we have signals for refereeing, high stick and interference and such. Your body sends you signals.
Yeah.
So pay attention.
Yeah, I get my colonoscopy every 5 years. But let's get back into hockey here. I knew.
Well, I said to Steve Levy when he said to me, I'm on ESPN with him and Melrose. And Melly was my teammate in Cincinnati 2 years.
How long were you on with them? Like an hour or what?
Yeah, it was a big show. Yeah.
Jesus.
And I said, they said, you've been through all of this. You're back. How do you feel now? I said, well, as far as the colon cancer, I have to say this. All my problems are behind me.
Thank you.
Steve Levy said, only Paul Stewart could say that on national television.
I love it. Stu, I knew this was going to be long stories. We can't go on forever, so we're going to have to do a part 2 of this soon. Whenever
I hope you had fun, and I'm sorry if we didn't get to everything you wanted to.
No. I don't want to be done yet. Can we go another like 10 or 15 minutes?
Sure, why not?
Okay, and then we'll do a part 2 anyway. But I want to go back to where we met when you came to the unbelievable Cape Cod Freedoms of the Northeastern Hockey League in 1979. It was 78-79 season, so you came late in that season. And it was an unbelievable league. It was the year after Slapshot, and we lived it. I mean, you lived it on the ice, but I lived it in a different way because here's a kid, I grew up in LA. What the hell am I doing on Cape Cod calling minor league hockey during this Slapshot era? And here we were in Utica, not you yet. You were, tell the story that, and this will hopefully be in a future volume of my book, Touching Greatness, but it was unbelievable. And I got a picture of our group picture there.
I think I'm standing right behind the owner.
Yes, you are. That is you. And that's me on the end next to Marky Evans, the goaltender, our backup goalie.
And you got the good hair going too, Teddy. Well, it was a good team. Jocko Kaye was the trainer. He went on.
Yep.
He was with the Rangers, and Cap Raider was my roommate, and Alan Globinski and Mark Bousquet. I was in Slapshot too.
Yep. Well, we're going to get into that. I want to talk
about
your.
I'm proud to say that I'm SAG now. I've been in 4 movies, and I had a speaking part.
I'm proud to say my resume is sagging, but that's another story. But we will talk about Slapshot the next show. But I want to talk about Cunny a little bit because, you know, this is the lowest of the minor leagues you could get at that time. The Northeastern Hockey League for 1 year was what the Eastern Hockey League became after Slapshot was released.
Yeah.
Slapshot came out.
It was interesting. I was in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Demers left. He wanted me to go to Quebec. Whitey wanted me to go to Indianapolis. Jules Leger wanted me to go to Birmingham.
Yeah, by the way, when you say Whitey, make sure you say Stapleton and not
Whitey Stapleton. Yeah.
Yes.
And I went back. I signed with Minnesota, and they merged with Cleveland. So I asked Nanny to let me out of the contract, and he wouldn't let me go to St. Louis. So I went back to Cincinnati. I liked the owner, except the coach and GM was a guy named Floyd Smith. And he just didn't like me. So he moved me 4 times. And finally he said, I'm sending you someplace the mail won't even find you. I said, they'll have a post office where I was making $1,000 a week, 52 grand. And I said to him, you just keep sending the checks. I went to the owner, Bill DeWitt, who owned St. Louis Cardinals. His family owned the Reds before. I said, you know, I always did everything to help this team. Came here in the summers, sold tickets, played golf tournaments, all that. I said, this guy doesn't like me, and he's trying to get me to quit. He said, what do you want to do? I said, he's going to send me to Cape Cod. Just leave me there. And just leave me alone. You know, you don't want me? No problem. I don't care. But you know what? The WHA is gone. And next year it'll be the NHL, and Floyd Smith, well, I'll deal with him like yesterday's newspaper.
Right. And so how well did you know?
I went down to the Cape, and I had a house down here.
Right.
And I grew up in the area. I caddied at Hyannisport, and I grew up in this area. So
probably
I
went to Cape Cod Cubs games and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
Bronco Horvath was the coach. Had been on the Uke line with Stasiuk and Busick, the Uke line, Ukrainians all out of Edmonton. Okay. Anyway, I came down, and it was kind of funny because I was making a good living. I had a house here. I was eating fried clams and just enjoying the hell out of myself. And you can see we didn't have a big team, but we had 3 or 4 pretty good guys, tough guys as far as it went. Globinski was tough. He played for Nordiques and he played for Maine, and Bousquet played with the Flyers and he played with the American League. And he was a tough kid, and he played they won that North American League Cup, and he played in Springfield. So we had a good team. Cap played for the Whalers. Johnny Cuniff was the player coach, and he had been an All-American at Boston College, and he went to the Bruins camp, and then he ended up with Hartford in the WHA in 72. And John had a little bit of an affliction with the bottle.
Exactly.
And I can't tell you how many nights I sat up with him till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, getting him past the drinking.
Wow.
And he was my friend. He was a guy I admired. He was a hard worker, and he had 4 children. So I said to him, he owned a sporting goods store in South Boston, which is 75 miles from the rink where we're playing on the Cape.
Yeah.
And I said to him, you know, I know you have the kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. I said, why don't you on Friday morning don't come to the morning skate? I said, Klobinski and I can handle it. We'll just put the guys through the paces and come down after school, get the kids out of school, come to the Cape. We'll play the game, and then I have a 4-bedroom house. Come on over. Two girls in one room, 2 boys in the other. You got your room, I got mine. So we did that. And after the game was over, it was like 9:30. I ordered Chinese food. I got the kids pizza and Coke, and they were in the kitchen with the TV. And Johnny and I are sitting in the living room. We got a fire going, and watching the Bruins. They were playing out in the Midwest somewhere, and the kids called for some more Coke. So I got up and I had false teeth from getting whacked over the years.
Right.
And I took them out and I put them in a napkin and I left them on the coffee table. And I get up and I go out and get the kids some more pizza and some more Coke, and they're watching their show. And I come back and Johnny's cleaned up. I said to him, "Oh, I see you cleaned up. You're all done eating?" Yeah, because it was extra wings and ribs and chop suey and all that. He goes, "No, I'm all set, thanks." He says, "Yeah, I cleaned up, no problem." I said, "There was a napkin on the coffee table right here. Where'd you put it?" He says, "Oh, I took all the plates and napkins and paper, and they're in the fire." So my teeth went up the chimney that night.
Oh no. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but Johnny was a good player and competitive, and when I got here, they stopped running at him.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Cincinnati recalled me for one game for whatever reason, and you guys went into Utica.
Oh, that was the game that I didn't remember that.
Yeah, they beat him up pretty good.
No, I remember him getting beat up, and then we played back-to-back games in Utica.
Yeah.
And the first game he got beat up. The next game, we were all telling John, "What the hell are you playing for?" And he was such a gamer. It was like he just put a mask on and he played. His face looked like he was in a war.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I came back and he was so beat up. He was drinking his coffee through a straw.
Yeah, I remember.
It was just a tough situation. And I told him, I said, "I'll take care of that. I'll take care of this for you. Don't worry about it." And it's kind of funny because later on we went to Erie and Nick Polano was coaching and he sent Val James out. Val got into it with me. I think he kind of got the drop on me a little bit, and he broke my nose. They took me to the clinic and straightened my nose and had cotton. I looked like a walrus with the cotton.
I don't know why I remember that vaguely, but I do.
And the next night we're playing Erie again. And Johnny said to me, "Don't fight him. Don't fight him." Val, big, tough. He was a big black kid from Long Island. His father ran the rink out there at Comac Arena where the Ducks used to play, the Eastern League. Right. And Val was big, strong, tough kid. And first shift, he came down on me. I turned him to the boards. And I didn't even bother to body check him. I threw a punch. I hit him right between the eyes with a punch that would have killed a normal guy. And he hit me and put my nose on the other side. It's ironic because a couple years later, I'm refereeing he's playing for Toronto, and we're in St. Catharines, an exhibition game. And I skating around, and I said to him, "Hey, Val, how you been?" Broken nose is a broken nose. So what?
Right.
He said, "Good." I said, "When you get finished playing, you come on to the ref." And I said, "Imagine you and me cruising around here." I said, "No one will bother us."
That is great.
Johnny Cuniff, God rest his soul, never smoked. He had he overcame the drinking, and he raised 4 wonderful children. And I'm sorry to say, I went to his funeral. He died of esophageal cancer, and I often think it was all those years on the bus. Back then, everybody smoked.
Oh, interesting.
It was a culture thing.
Never thought about that.
Yeah, and I just think that it's kind of funny because he said, he and I would sit and talk, and he said to me, "There's nobody on skates that causes you a problem except one guy." What? I turned, I said to him, "Oh yeah, who's that guy?" He goes, "You cause your own problem." And I don't think he was too far off.
No, I get it. He was probably my most important hockey mentor, because when we would be on those 12, 13, 15-hour bus rides, I would go up to the front 2 buses, and for a while we didn't have the best buses. I mean, we weren't on Greyhounds, we had a few like there were school buses, you know, the yellow the yellow school bus.
How bad were they? There were no bunks or
Hell no,
comfortable.
bunks.
And when we'd go on these trips to these places that were far away from Cape Cod to
Johnstown,
get,
Erie,
oh
Utica,
my goodness, and
whatever.
Lewiston.
Erie was, I think, 15 hours, 16 hours, something like that.
Yeah. And it was just, you knew you were in the minors as the bus came back over the Sagamore Bridge, back on to Cape Cod after 6 days on the bus with all these guys that, you know, some people left their heart in San Francisco. Most of these guys left their thirst at the last bar. And
Yeah.
and you'd get on the bus toward the end of the trip, and it was like the tide. The bus would go to the left, and all the bottles and cans would roll to the left.
Yes, they would.
And then they'd roll to the right. And it and
It sounded like
guys
a cheap jewelry store with the jingling going on in there.
and guys would bring a pint on board and drink that, and then they'd pee in the pint, and the bottle would break, and it was Mecca. It was
Okay,
unbelievable.
I'm going to give you a stat. I bet you don't even know this, and maybe you do. You see the Cape Cod Freedoms roster there, right?
Yep.
When you were on the team, do you know that 6 of those guys, 6 of them in the lowest minors possible, became future Hall of Famers? 6. Can you
Really?
guess? Yeah. Well, you know, Johnny Cuniff obviously was a USA Hockey Hall of Famer too, just
Yeah,
like
and he
yourself.
coached. He had a great. He was a smart guy.
Oh yeah,
And
he was brilliant.
let's see.
Yeah, who can you get?
Well, Bousquet at
Yep.
AIC.
That's
And
correct.
Cap
Mark
Raider at
Bousquet, by the
UNH.
way, so people, in case they don't remember Mark Bousquet, they might remember him as Poodle in Slapshot. So
Slapshot.
exactly. Who
He
else?
met his wife here on Cape Cod too. Beautiful girl, and they
okay.
have a nice family. They live in Springfield.
Yep.
Cap Raiders retired. Of course, he coached in LA with Melly,
Yep.
and he's in the UNH Hall of Fame.
Very good.
And Dookie Walsh is in the Notre Dame Hall of Fame.
Oh,
My
I didn't
dad
have
was
Dookie Walsh. Then there's 7 of them. I didn't know Dookie Walsh was there too.
Yeah. I'm not sure. No. Oh, Lambie.
Lambie, I don't know about.
Yeah, he's in BU.
Is he really?
He played in the Olympics and played in St. Louis.
Okay.
So
then
I
there's
think
8
Barrett
of them.
I think Barrett.
BC.
Yeah, he was a BC kid.
He's in their Athletic Hall of Fame, which I did not know. He went in like 5 years after we were done on the Cape.
Yeah.
And John Danby.
John Danby to the rescue.
BU Athletic Hall of Fame.
He still lives on the Cape. He had a dry cleaning business for a long time.
You see him at all?
John Danby, he could stop and start on a dime, and he's quite a nice guy. I've talked to him on occasion. You know, we all keep in touch. Cap's daughter was working for the Kings. I would see her when I would go out to LA. His wife Wendy is a beautiful girl, great athlete at UNH, and has a son and another daughter, and he's retired and lives in Vermont.
Yep.
So, you know,
well, we're going to do a show.
I have to say, you know, the guy that we both know, and I need to get to Tampa to go see him, is Barry Melrose.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He's up against it a bit with his situation.
Have you talked to him at all?
I keep, you know, it's kind of funny. I keep meaning to, and I want to. I'd rather just fly down there and go see him.
No, I get it.
That's what I want to do.
I heard, so the last I heard, he was actually doing fairly well. Hopefully that is the truth. And I'd love to get him on my show because we got some stories to talk about, and hopefully he'll be up for it.
Listen, when I was sick, was the day after, I was diagnosed the morning after my son was born.
Right.
And they sent me a beautiful doll for my boy, you know, little play toy and plush. And his wife, she was just such a nice girl. And Melly's such a good guy. I always laugh because, you know, I did a couple of TV commercials in Cincinnati. One of them, I did the Rocky thing, hitting the meat, and come on down to the Coliseum and see the Stingers tonight. You never
Right,
know
right.
what's going to happen. And I had the shirt off, and I was kind of muscly, and I got all these letters. And Jamie Hislop and I used to sit next to each other, and he'd read the letters and take the pictures, and he'd hang them up in the back. So I'd say to Melly, "Come on over here and take a look at these pictures." And he'd say, "Oh yeah," and he'd come over. And then one day he said, "Come on over and see what my pictures." And I went over and I said, "What are we looking at?" And he goes, "Oh, I just got a new tractor. It's got air conditioning and an AM/FM radio and a cassette player."
That's great. Well,
Oh, it was fun.
going back to the Cape, by the way, I'm wearing this shirt here, this Cape Cod Coliseum shirt.
There you go.
Put the hat. By the way, I got the hat too. Check out the hat.
There you go. I like that. That's terrific. The funny part is that the Coliseum was Vince McMahon bought it, the wrestling guy.
Oh
He
yeah,
had all the
I met
wrestlers
him
living
the
down-
day he was wandering in when our owner said, "I got a feeling this place is not going to be available very much longer." And there were rumors about him buying it. And then he walked into the office. I didn't know who the hell he was.
He wanted to buy every team in the league.
Really?
And he wanted to turn it. I got to talk to him a few times. Jimmy Troy ended up working for him. Mike Breen, both hockey players. Mike played in Rochester, and Jimmy Troy played some in Hartford. Was an agent for a while and such. But I didn't like the whole idea of promoting this.
Right.
I did it.
No, I get it.
I did it in Cincinnati because it was Major League and it was right around the time of Rocky in the show.
Right.
And I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But, I didn't mind doing it. They didn't pay me extra or anything. I just did it. But the Coliseum got bought up by the Christmas tree shops, and they turned it into a huge warehouse.
That's what I heard, yeah.
Past year, Christmas tree shops, which was a great store, like a lot of others, such as Bed Bath & Beyond and such.
Oh,
they've all gone out of business.
So is the building still there?
Building's there, and it's just a warehouse, but I don't know what's in it.
Wow.
I don't.
Wow. That's my office. My old office was in there.
Well, I'm in the commercial roofing business, and I do roofs all over New England and all over the U.S.
Well, that's got to be the biggest roof in the neighborhood. If you ever need to do that, that'll be good.
No doubt about it. Tecta America is my company, but I handle Gillette Stadium and Patriot Place.
Oh, okay.
I handle the Diocese of Fall River, which is it's all the way up almost to Providence and all the way to Provincetown, and then the islands, all the churches and rectories and schools and things like that. And people say to me, "What do you know about roofing?" I just go, "Well, they're up there." I said, it's not so much what I know, it's the team I'm with. The guys that I work with, they know everything about roofing. But when we get into Gillette Stadium, it's because I knew Mr. Kraft and I know his son, and I know all the people at Gillette. We all try to help out the Hockomock YMCAs who do terrific. During the COVID, they were feeding like 500 families, this YMCA. Nice. And it's all the money's raised from the Patriots Legends tournament. And I go to it every year and I do what I can do to help them. And it's just, you see these kids. And like I said before, I've always been a guy that tried to help out and stick up for people that can't.
Yep. No, I get it. Right.
Businesses come out of it.
Good.
Harry Sinnen said about me in the roofing business.
What?
He said, "Well, it seems right because you took the roof off of this goddamn building with your refereeing, especially that first night." He said, "You should put one back on before you leave."
Free of charge, right?
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, let's wrap this up by a little bit more kudos to Cunny, and before we and get a couple of thoughts on the Stanley Cup final too. But tell people how good he was, because I remember, I don't want to overhype this. It was so long ago, but I know I've talked to people even a few years after he retired and then became a scout and a coach and all that.
He was assistant coach in the NHL.
Right. No, it was a head coach.
He was the go between the head coach and like with the players, he would be
Right.
the intermediate. He was the good cop,
Exactly.
like Craig Patrick was with the Olympic team.
Exactly. So Cunny became, I think he was first an interim, then became the head coach in Jersey, if I remember correctly. Does that sound right?
That's right. And with USA Hockey, he did so much for clinics and exposing people to the game and the expansion of the game. And then he sadly was snatched away from us. But he
Yeah.
wasn't a big guy. And I used to watch him. There's a place over in South Boston where he was from. I used to watch him run down the beach with a lead jacket on. He only weighed 165 pounds.
Right.
He wasn't a big guy.
No, 5'8", I think.
But 160 pounds of him was heart.
Oh, yeah.
And the other 5 pounds was all brain because he was smart and he was tough and he worked at it. And I tell you right now, it's one of the reasons why, and I watched him play in college as a kid, and my dad refereed the games. And my father was the only guy that called him Jack.
Really?
Jack. That was his name.
No, I know.
His name was John, but his mother and everybody else called him Jack. My father called him Jack. I just call him Cunny. And
is that a New England thing, like Kennedy, the same thing, or I don't know?
Yes, it's very similar. When the president, whose house is not even a half a mile from my house here. I have the smallest house in Hyannisport, but I have the same zip code as the Kennedys, so I guess I'm okay.
Yeah, and you also have more Pims than them too, by far, so it's not even close.
No doubt about it. But I played a game of golf the other day with Chris Kennedy, one of Ethel's sons, and I've been here since 1965, and
wow.
I've known the family and the Shrivers and the Smiths and Joan Kennedy, and I knew Jackie. People ask all the time, who's the most famous person you ever met? And they're expecting I'm going to say Gordie Howe or Bobby Hill, and I go, Jacqueline Kennedy. She used to run the inside 5 holes closest to the clubhouse. And then when she'd get to the top of the hill, she'd stop and she'd talk.
You mean just jogging, just
and then
jogging.
She'd smoke.
Oh God!
But she was a lovely person, and Ethel always treated me very well.
Nice.
I brought 3 guys to the club once to play golf as a thank you. Steve Rooney won a Montreal Stanley Cup. Joe Mullen won a cup with Calgary, and Chris Nyland won a cup with Montreal.
Yep.
And I brought them because my neighbor just around the corner, like 4 houses away, his father was a coach, high school coach. His father
is the another fight?
That's my phone. I have a bell sound. His father was a coach and his family terrific. His dad played for the Red Sox back in the 30s. Gallagher, his name was. Anyway, Timmy had a heart transplant when he was 12. We went to visit him at Children's Hospital. And not only did we go to visit him, but we went to every room in that hospital. And those guys were signing autographs and signing pictures and giving away pucks. And they were so terrific. And I took them to Hyannisport to play as a thank you. I mean, I knew them all.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
So we play the morning round, and I take them into the dining room, and we're having lunch. And here comes Ethel Kennedy. I said, hey, Ethel, come on over here. I want you to meet these guys. Boy, show them your bling. And they all got the Stanley Cup rings. And I said, sit down and have a chat. And she said, well, would you like to play this afternoon? And I said, I have to go, but these guys are welcome to stay. And
Outstanding.
Guess what? They played with Ethel.
Really?
Then they stayed at her house. And I think they came back to the club that night for dinner. And at the halfway house, they got 2 or 3 cases of beer, and they went to the beach, and they had a hell of a time. And I got the bill. It was $900.
Oh, shit.
So I send them all a note, and I say, I hope you guys had a good time. Thanks for going. Timmy Gallagher's going to be fine. And
wow.
And I appreciate it. I said, I hope you had fun with Ethel. I didn't mind paying for the morning and the lunch, but after I left, you spent another $900. And so they all said, oh, well, when we see you, we'll give you a check. I was like, so I go to Calgary for an exhibition game.
Yeah.
And I'm skating around, and I said to Mullen, hey, how's it going? Moon. His nickname's Moon. Hey, right. Moon. He played at Boston College. and his father was on the crew at Madison Square Garden pushing the 55-gallon drum of water when they didn't have a Zamboni. Red, his name was Red, and his brother, of course, played in the Island and played at Wisconsin. And Moon, he's chuckling on the ice. He says, I'll take care of you after the game. Game's over. The security guy comes, knocks on my door. He said, Joe Mullen wants to see you. I said, send him in. I'm figuring I'm getting my check for $300. And he walks in, he goes, hey, how's it going? I said, good. I said, these guys are just about to leave. They were local. I said, so I'm going out to have a bite to eat. And he goes, well, I got to go. We're going someplace to Edmonton to play tomorrow night. I said, yeah, I know. I got the game tomorrow night. So he said to me, do you like cowboy boots? And I said, I don't know. I have never had them. He goes, well, I got a hat trick tonight. And there's Alberta Boot, custom made cowboy boots. And I got a pair for getting a hat trick. I said, oh, that's terrific. He says, they're worth $1,500. They're custom made. He said, would this cover my golf fee?
Oh, that's funny.
So I got a beautiful pair of kangaroo black cowboy boots with the Olympic seal on the heel, on the back heel. And I always laugh about that. And it's kind of funny because that Tim had the heart transplant, and he's married now. He's got 4 kids.
Good. That's nice. Hey, look, that bell, by the way, is the 3-minute warning. We got 3 minutes left. So let's. I want to bring up that picture again with Cunny and this is the '68 Olympic team. That's him second to the left, next to the goalie, and the guy sitting next to Cunny. Can you tell who that guy is? USA '68.
Oh my goodness!
With a C, they got 2 C's. I noticed there. The one next to him with a C.
That's on the right of that guy is Lou Nanny, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But the one in between them is Herbie Brooks.
Oh, Herb. Yeah.
You can't give me a long story. We don't have a lot. Of
no, I retired in 2003.
Right.
The day I retired, I got a beautiful handwritten letter from Herb.
Really nice.
And 2 days later, I have family in Minnesota, and my wife's family's
2 years
from there,
days later.
And I have a godchild and such.
Wow.
And they were at the golf tournament when he was driving home and flipped his car.
Oh, jeez.
So he fell asleep.
Yeah, I know. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt either. Otherwise, he might still be here.
And you know what? He was coaching in Pittsburgh one night, and I called a penalty, and he calls me over, and he's pointing at his lapel. And I'm like 30 feet from him, and I go, what the hell is he pointing at? And I skate over and a little closer, and I get closer, and he goes, and it was a Hockey Fights cancer pin.
Oh, are you serious?
He's telling me, don't be calling penalties on me. I support you.
No, they'll try any angle, won't they? It's unbelievable. Yeah. Okay, who do you like in the Cup final, Stu? Before we gotta
I like
go.
Florida.
Me too.
I don't get to see Edmonton as much. I saw them quite a bit now with Dallas, and I like the team Dallas put together. They just Edmonton just has such a magnificent player in that Connor McDavid there. He's a good player. But I like Florida because they combine a little bit of the old and a little bit of the new. They've got, players that are skilled, but the old is they've got a goaltender that can stop pucks, and they've got 2 guys, Kachuk and Bennett, that'll run you over and think nothing of it.
Yeah, and their depth, they have a smothering forecheck like no other team in the league right now.
No, when they're playing 5-on-5, they look like they're on a power play. Boston, I get to see them quite a bit more, but Boston, they couldn't physically skate with Florida. Florida just won all the battles.
Right.
And the Rangers, finally, they started to catch on. The only way they're going to get anything going with Florida was they had to shoot the puck more but they were shooting it, and that goaltender's so good, he was just, snapping it up. So
Yep.
how many games were 1 goal? 4? Something like
most
that?
of them. Yeah, I had Billy Jaffe on an NHL Network, and he says hello to you, by the way. I had him on this morning, and Billy and I both basically agreed. I mean, this is, it's so obvious. You got to stay out of the box as far as facing Edmonton, because you let those guys.
Boston had 5 too many men penalties.
That's just ridiculous. You
That's a
deserve to lose.
That's a
You deserve to
housekeeping.
lose, don't you?
No, but that's the coordination between they're too busy looking at they all, something happens, they all go look at this.
I don't know what the hell they're doing.
I
Exactly.
memorized games. And I'm not brilliant, but I can tell you, I'd go through a game and the supervisor would come in and talk to me after. I'd say, that's not what happened. This is what happened.
I get it.
You didn't see it, but the guy grabbed the kid's stick,
Yeah.
put his hand in between him, and he went to shoot and he couldn't shoot. So I gave him a penalty. Well, it wasn't a good penalty. I said, it looked good to me. So.
All right, we got to go.
Remember one thing.
Yeah.
Remember one thing.
Yes, sir.
We were here and we did it. And they can never take it away from us. And I walked into LA Forum, and Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell and
Jack they were there during the Gretz days.
They would come by and, hi, Paul, how you doing? And no, seriously, I played at Sherwood one day, and Mac Davis and James Garner and Jack Nicholson are in the men's locker room playing cards. I'm with Wally Harris, and this doesn't happen to everybody. And it was because, and that's the reason why my children's book, the Christmas book that I wrote a story for Huffington Post. We turned it into a Christmas book, The Magical Christmas for Paul Stewart.
Good.
Because I could skate, my whole life evolved.
Absolutely. No doubt.
And because you could speak and you had that
occasionally.
But you had that acceptability. You listening to you, and I've heard you on the radio and I've seen you. You're like a comfortable pair of slippers. You just
with a little hole on the side, though.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing's perfect.
It is so great to see you again, Stewie. It really is. And we're not done. We're going to do a part 2 of this because we got a lot.
Well, I'm awfully glad, Ted, that I overcame my shyness.
Exactly. I don't even have to ask a damn question. I could leave the room for an hour and you would still be talking.
Don't do that.
Thanks again for the time. I appreciate it. Again, we will do it soon. And I want to do a special show on that one game that you weren't at in Utica, where the cops came out on the ice and the arrests were about to happen. And the opposing Utica beat writer wanted to fight me during my broadcast. It's insane. But that's the way the Slapshot era was, right, Stu?
Well, it's nothing to do with Utica. It has everything to do with the beer. Utica Club beer was Matt's Premium. Ugh.
Okay. All right,
I better be careful because the president of TECTA, Dave Reganelli, is in Chicago, and he's a Utica guy. So I can't dump on that town too much.
Yeah, Utica Mohawks. Go.
That's it. And I was in Clinton. I played in Clinton too. And they threw the chairs on the ice.
Yeah.
So I fought Blake Ball. You name him, I fought him.
All right. Look, I'm fighting the time. We got to get out of here. Thanks again for everything. We'll talk soon, and we'll do another show that's going to cover so much more. It's not even funny.
Looking forward to it. I hope my backdrop's okay.
No, it's great. You got the USA Hall of Fame jersey. You got the referee and the WHA from the great days of Dennis Murphy. Started my career, and he started your league.
There you go.
All right, man.
Imagine me sitting at the head table. Bobby Hull, Anders Hedberg, Ulf Nielsen, Mark Cardiff, Andre Lacroix, and Paul Stewart. I said to the guy, in French, I said to him, I think there's a problem. I'm at the wrong table.
Yeah.
He goes,
which
why?
one?
I said, these guys all scored goals. He goes, well, you had 2, but you had more fights than them.
No, you were the Joker card of that hand, right?
Exactly.
No, yeah. I got it. Me too. Believe me. All right, man.
That they knew me was an honor.
I totally get it. Take care, man. All the best.
Take care. Bye.
All righty. Good to see you. You
Bye
got
now.
it. Thank you. And we will have Daryl Evans of the Kings coming up on Friday, and it won't even be close to this long, and it never needs to be. But Stu, he's got 1,000 stories. I couldn't shut him up. Thanks for watching Touching Greatness, everybody. Old time hockey at its best.